Chapter 18 Briarwood. They took the news that Eric might be the Shroud about as well as Daniel had expected. Rowan's first reaction was to get very quiet. Daniel knew that he was turning the evidence over in his head, testing for himself whether Daniel's conclusion fit the facts. Rowan was quick to point out that photos could be altered. Heck, with a little time at the computer, he could make any one of the kids into the Shroud. But Daniel thought Rowan would eventually agree that they should at least look for more evidence, even though he would urge caution along the way. Molly's reaction was just as predictable, if a tad more violent. First she called Daniel a bad name, then she took a half-hearted swing at him, which he managed to duck. Daniel knew it was half-hearted because if Molly really wanted to hit him, he wouldn't even see it coming. As it was, he barely got out of the line of fire in time, despite the fact he was waiting for it. Then Molly got quiet, which in many ways was worse. Daniel would take the hitting and cursing Molly over the quiet Molly any day. "But you don't have any real proof," she said after a time. "You have all these theories and Plunkett's word, but no proof." "There's the photo," offered Daniel. "Photos can be fakes," said Molly. "Rowan just said so." "Listen," said Daniel. "I hope I'm wrong. I pray that I'm wrong. But you have to admit that Plunkett's theory makes a lot more sense than everything else we've been told. All that stuff about the rules and Johnny Noble, do you even have to ask who first told you all of that?" Molly was silent, but Rowan nodded. "It was Eric," he said. "Eric is older than all of you," said Daniel, "and he's only a little younger than the other kids who've lost their powers. From a strategic standpoint, it makes sense. You go after them when they turn 13, before they get too powerful to stop. And just look at all the things Eric can do. He's as strong as clay, he can fly like Michael could, and he's almost as fast as Molly. Why does he have all those powers when you all have at most one or two?" "Then why does he wait at all?" asked Molly. "Why doesn't he come after us when we're little like Rose?" Daniel hadn't thought of that, but surprisingly, Rowan had the answer. "Well, if what Daniel says is true, then maybe he wants the powers he steals to be strong. He waits just long enough for the powers to ripen, so to speak, but still acts before they become a real threat." Molly shot Rowan a look that spoke daggers. "If," he said, throwing his hands up in the air. "I said if." "Molly, I don't want to judge Eric guilty without more proof, but I also don't want to find ourselves unprepared if the worst happens," said Daniel. "If it is Eric behind all of this, then it's because he's sick, and I want to try and help him if we can." Molly kicked at a pebble with her shoe and stared at the dirt. She looked, for a moment, like a very little girl, and it reminded Daniel of how out of their depth they all were. "Okay," she said quietly. "What do you want to do?" "Well, first of all, you were right. We need more proof. And if we're going to confront him, then we need more than just conspiracy theories and a blurry photo to back us up. We need to find those missing issues of Fantastic Futures, the ones featuring the Shroud. If Eric has those in his possession, that's pretty strong evidence that he's been less than honest." "Anyone up for a little breaking and entering?" asked Rowan. The three of them stood outside Eric's window, trying to summon up courage that no one wanted to find. They were preparing to break into the house of one of their best friends. While they hesitated, a feral cat and her kitten skittered off into the house, while a neighboring guard dog strained against its leash and barked a warning. Rowan pointed to a single beaten-up car in the driveway. "Looks like someone's home," he said. "Eric's mom," said Molly. "She works the night shift at Norma's Grill, so she'll probably still be asleep." Rowan gave Molly a worried look. "It's all right," she said. "She sleeps with earplugs in." They parked their bikes by the side of the house and went around the rear, careful to stay out of reach of the barking dog. The yard reminded Daniel of lots back in Philadelphia, mostly weeds and dirt. "Wow," said Rowan. "I never knew that Eric lived, well, like this." "They're not rich, but they're good people," Molly said. Even as she said the words, she grimaced. Daniel understood the struggle going on inside her. If they found what they were looking for, that would mean that Eric wasn't such a good person after all. It would mean that he wasn't even the person they thought they knew. This morning, Daniel had taken Molly's entire world and turned it on its head. "Here," she said. "That's his window." It was just a few inches above the grass itself. "He lives in the basement?" Daniel asked. "It's not as bad as it sounds. You'll see." Molly knelt down and pointed to the latch that dangled loose at the edge of the pane. "The lock's busted, and Eric uses it to sneak out at night." Molly suddenly fell silent. "I didn't mean it like that," she said quietly. "That sounded terrible." "We know," said Ron. "We all feel the same." Nodding, she pushed on the window's base, opening it inward. Molly stood up and dusted off her knees. "After you, detective." Daniel eyed the window suspiciously, wishing that he'd thought to bring a flashlight. The sunshine would give him enough light to see by, but it was still pretty dark down there. "Rowan, why don't you come with me? And Molly, you keep an eye out. Eric said he was going to the fort, but just in case." "Don't worry, just hurry up." Daniel scooted through the open window, followed by Rowan. Both kids fit with no problem. Daniel noticed the earth around the window was worn smooth. Daniel must have used this exit a lot. It wasn't as dark inside as Daniel had feared, and he took a moment to study the room. It was typical Eric. Posters of superheroes and long boxes filled with comics everywhere. On the opposite wall, there was a map of Noble's Green and the surrounding countryside. One of those satellite photos taken from space. Daniel had seen the exact same kind in the observatory gift shop on the day that Eric had saved his life. The day that Eric had saved his life. There was that sick feeling again. The guilt knotted up Daniel's stomach like a rope. "Let's hurry," he said to Rowan. He didn't want to be here any longer than he had to. Rowan began looking through the comics while Daniel studied the map. As he looked closer, he saw tiny pinholes dotted the entire area. There was one pin for the Tangle Creek Bridge, and quite a few more for spots here in Briarwood. Daniel suspected that Eric was marking all the places where he had actually done some good, all the places where he'd been a hero. "I don't think you should bother with the regular comic boxes, Rowan, at least not to start. He'd probably keep these comics hidden away, so we need to find a hiding place, like a locked box or a secret compartment or something." "Sure, I'll just pull out the candelabra and reveal the hidden passage that leads to his lair, the Shroud Cave." Daniel looked at Rowan. "Sorry," said Rowan. "I'm a little stressed out." "It's okay. Let's just get this over with." They continued to search Eric's room, looking under the bed and behind bookshelves, but found nothing. Despite the frustration, Daniel actually found his spirits starting to rise. Maybe Eric was innocent. Maybe this was all just a paranoia of a lonely old man who read too many pulp novels. He was just about to call it quits when Rowan returned to the map on the wall. "You looked at this?" Rowan asked. "Yeah, looks like he's using it to record his adventures." "Why is it breathing?" "What? What are you talking about?" Daniel joined Rowan at the map and followed his friend's eyes. Sure enough, the map was moving, ever so slightly. The surface undulated in a slow rhythm, like the sail in the light breeze. "Hold on," said Daniel. He grabbed the edge of the map, where it was taped to the wall. Careful not to tear the paper, he peeled it back and exposed the air shaft behind the poster. A very slight draft issued forth, causing the edges of the map to ripple. The grating was missing, and the open vent went back into the wall before disappearing into a larger central shaft. Resting in the cavity was a small stack of comics, wrapped in plastic. Daniel gently removed them from their hiding place and showed them to Rowan, who nodded. And Rowan pointed to the window as Molly, silhouetted against the sunlight, peered through it. Daniel held the books up to the light and showed her the dusty covers. There was no mistaking the shadowy figure drawn on the front. She said nothing, but the look in her face was unmistakable. Daniel couldn't have hurt her more if he'd physically struck her. "Molly!" Daniel shouted. "Wait!" But it was too late. Molly stepped away from the window and was gone. That was when he heard the footsteps upstairs. Daniel looked at Rowan, who was shaking his head. "Oh, man," he said. "We are so grounded." At that moment, the door burst open and two policemen with flashlights appeared, brandishing pistols. "Freeze!" one of them yelled. "Hands in the air!" As Daniel put his hands up, he saw a woman peeking over the shoulder of one of the officers. She was in her bathrobe and had a cell phone clutched to her chest. "My goodness," she said. "They're just kids." "Yes," Daniel thought. "I wonder if they have kid-sized handcuffs, because it looks like we're going to jail."